Welcome to Conversations with David Ibarra. Today's guest is Blake Murdock. Welcome, Blake.
Thanks, Dave. Great to be here.
Well, listen, I want to start off today's program by just asking you the question to tell us a little bit about you. Tell us your history, your backstory.
Okay, thank you. So I am a fourth-generation car dealer in business with my brother and my cousin. How we got to that point goes a little ways back, but I'm the oldest of 10 kids. Grew up in a family that was really loud, really chaotic, and a ton of fun. But we were raised almost by a single parent. My mom took care of us, and my dad lived at the dealership. And I remember my mom telling me a story when I was, 2 or 3. We drove by the dealership one day, and I said, "Look, Mom, there's Daddy's house." And he literally lived at this store in order to get going, and those were obviously back in the early days of Murdock Chevrolet. So from there, growing up, because I didn't see my dad much, and he put his heart and soul into building this business along with his brother and his dad, I never really had the desire to get into the car business.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be in an industry or a profession where I felt like I could be around my family a little bit more, and had the ambition after serving an LDS mission to go to school to become an attorney and pursue a different path. Well, when I got married, right after I got home from my mission, my dad abruptly reminded me that I was now responsible to pay for everything that I needed, including school. So my ambition to become an attorney was ended quickly when I had to find a way to pay for school. So in order to pay for school, I went to him and said, "Hey, would it be okay if I sold cars while I'm going through college?" And he honestly tried to talk me out of it. He kind of said, "This is really tough, and it's just not for everybody. And I just want to make sure if you get in, you know how hard it's going to be." And he gave me fair warning. And I said, "Well, I'm not planning on staying forever. I just got to go to school. I just got to have a way to pay for it." And he said, "Well, yeah, if that's your intent, that would be great." So I started selling cars at Murdock Chevrolet. I was 21 years old, and honestly, I was terrible. I was just so bad at it. I really had no. I mean, I guess what you would say is I didn't have the killer instinct.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to nice people into wanting to buy a car.
Right.
Well, what I found out is if you don't actually ask them to buy the car, they don't. They just thank you for your time and, move on to someone who is an actual salesperson. So what happened is I sold cars for a few months. The summer I got home from my mission was horrible and thought, yeah, I'm for sure not going to do this. Then I moved away, went to school and got married. And the advice my dad gave me was, "Blake, don't go get a job where you just punch a clock. Make sure you do something where you have to use your brain." So, of course, I went to the very best thing I could find, and that was to sell Cutco knives. And I
don't think I've ever heard this story.
So I was teased and ridiculed for being a knife salesman, but that literally changed my entire perspective of what it was to sell and what it was to serve and what it was to have a value proposition. And, I was going into people's homes, selling knives for thousands of dollars. And I thought, if I can sell a knife, how come I couldn't sell a car?
Let me ask you this question. What was the difference that you were doing selling knives at somebody's home? What specifically was the difference in the process as opposed to selling cars the 2 months that you did at Murdock Woods Cross Chevrolet?
So the main difference was the training was incredibly extensive, and I had to know the product so well that I could answer any question about the product I sold, about the competitor's product, and it was really easy to build value. So the difference for me is instead of just walking out on the lot and saying, "Yeah, this is a great car, you should buy it," I actually was demonstrating a product that I knew had an incredible amount of value and had a ton of confidence in presenting that. And
Right.
So when I went through that process and gained that confidence and realized what selling actually was, it became so much easier. So after selling Cutco knives for nearly a year, that was out of state. I came back to Utah to continue my education, and went back to my dad again and said, hey, is there any chance I could sell cars so I can continue to pay for school? And he was like, I think he could remember what happened the first few months I did that. And he was like, oh, I don't know. Anyway, he allowed me to come back and sell cars, and it was a completely different scenario, where I quickly became one of our top producing salespeople in our used car department at the time. And just a year and a half later, doing that while I was going to school, our family.
Let me ask you this real quick. So, would you say that the knife company that you represented had an extensive training onboarding system, and they weren't going to allow you to go to anybody's house and not be equipped with the process to sell? Would you say that then the training you received when you first started may have been lacking?
At the dealership?
Yes.
Almost non-existent.
Okay.
And that's not a slide on my dad or my uncle.
Yeah.
They're amazing. They're great. It just, the industry was
It
different.
was the industry.
It was different.
Yeah, exactly.
And so yes, and going through that training process really helped me understand, wow, when you know what you're doing, it really isn't that complicated.
And onboarding right.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Cool. Now, you were saying about your family?
So a year and a half of selling cars, going to school, our family acquired a dealership down in Price, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the intent was to kind of keep the people in Price there and build the brand and bring our family name and reputation down to that valley. And after a few months, I don't know that it was going exactly how they had planned, and they thought, well, maybe we can send someone from our organization down there. So from what I recall, I wasn't part of this meeting, but they gathered all of their managers together from Murdock Chevrolet and proposed the opportunity to take their family and move down to Price, Utah, and operate this dealership. And you can imagine they didn't have one person interested in that. So my grandpa suggested that they send me. Well, at the time, I was only 23 years old. I had zero management or leadership experience. I was still in school, relatively newly married, and a baby on the way. And my dad said, no way. He said, I've told Blake from the beginning, if he ever wants to be in leadership in our organization, he has to graduate from college. And my grandpa just said, well, then I guess maybe we should just sell the dealership. And he said, well, we're not quite ready for that yet. I guess maybe we can consider it. So after a few months back and forth, they decided to send me to Price. And talk about baptism by fire. I mean, I thought I was a bad salesman in the beginning. I was a way worse manager. And so I go down to Price and find a double wide trailer to live in, and literally just kind of repeated what I saw my dad do. I figured if I was going to figure out how to be successful, I kind of just had to live at the dealership. So from 6:30 in the morning till 8 at night, 6 days a week, I kind of just went and figured it out. And my uncle Ko and my dad Blake, they kind of took turns coming down one day a week and giving me as much support as they possibly could from a distance. And I made a ton of mistakes and lost the company a lot of money. But over time, what was exciting is the first month I was there, I remember the dealership sold 18 total vehicles. 3 years later, the last month that we were in business in Price, the company sold 80 vehicles. So in that small market, that was quite an accomplishment.
Certainly.
Even though I hadn't quite figured out how to be a great business person yet, I had at least established some decent habits of learning how to lead and to get some production out of our team. So it was an amazing experience. While I was there, we had our first son, my wife and I, Katie. We had our first son, McKay, and right after, a couple years later, we had our daughter Carly. So we had 2 kids in Price, and from there, we had some opportunities happening on the Wasatch Front where our family acquired our first Hyundai dealership. That was in 2005. And I remember my dad, I'd only been in Price for a year and a half, and he said, hey, we're getting close to acquiring a Hyundai store. Would you want to come back to Utah County and work there? And I said, no way. I said, Hyundai? Are you kidding me? And you got to remember, in 2005, Hyundai was the brand that nobody wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And we were at a full-line Chevrolet GM store in Price where we offered every product, including Cadillac. And it was a pretty exciting brand to be a part of. And I just thought that would be a terrible mistake to leave the opportunity I was in to come back to Orem to sell Hyundais. Well, a year and a half went by, another year and a half went by, and we decided to sell the dealership in Price. And that was to help fuel future growth in the Wasatch Front. And turned out to be a great decision. But so from there, I went to our Hyundai dealership in Orem after being in Price for 3 years and started working there. And what an amazing experience to see how Hyundai has grown as a brand and as a manufacturer. And then also for the amazing people I've had the opportunity to work with, to see how our dealership in Orem grew from selling 40 vehicles a month to this month, March of 2022, we will sell 420 vehicles.
Wow.
So
now,
that's pretty remarkable.
That's a incredible success story. And I remember those days you were in Price and moved up to the Orem store at the time on an acre and a half, selling 100.5 to 180, and then moving to Linden. But I want to, before we move on to talk about some leadership topics, I'd like to. I'm just wondering now. You had 10 brothers and sisters.
Well, 9. Because I'm one
9,
of 10, yes.
9.
But there's 10 of us,
right.
yes.
Thanks for correcting the math. So now that almost all are adults, would that be right?
Yeah.
Which one of all of your brothers and sisters has the most children?
My sister, Brooke.
Has how many?
She's 15 months younger than me, and we're actually backyard neighbors. She just had her 10th child about 5 months ago. Yeah.
Ed, how many children do you have?
I have 5. I mentioned our 2 oldest. I have 5, ages 17 down to 6.
So what does a Murdock family Sunday dinner look like?
It's amazing.
Meaning all of your brothers, do you ever get together all at once?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. My parents intentionally built their home to be able to accommodate the entire family. And
so it's not a home, it's kind of a resort?
It feels that way.
How many typically show up?
Well, I only have one sister that lives out of state. She lives in Boise. But other than that, everyone lives relatively close. And of course, my sister from Boise, it's not that far of a drive. So if there's a holiday or a big event, she's there as well. So when that happens, when we're all together, which is pretty common, at least once a month, there's 43 grandchildren and 10 kids, and 9 of us are married, and it is just total chaos.
So we're somewhere in the neighborhood of about 60, 65 people.
Yeah. And there's always friends and other people that are invited.
Be honest with me.
Yeah.
Really honest. Do you remember everybody's name every time?
My sister one time tested me and said, Blake, do you know my daughter's name? I said, of course I do. And I'm thinking, what is it? And she's like, okay, what is it? And I said, Allie? And she's like, Blake, that's my 10-year-old. This is my 4-year-old. So occasionally I don't remember all of them, but we're getting better at it.
Okay. Well, you'd have to have a good memory to be a member of your family. Yeah. Let's shift to leadership. And since that time, you've obviously bought out your father and your uncle, and you and your brother and your cousin are running the Murdock Automotive Group, consisting of how many dealerships?
We have 7 dealerships. Yep.
And
8 brands.
And 8 brands. So you've gone from one in a rural to being a nice sized group.
Yeah.
Tell me about the leadership, and what are some of the things that are just absolutely you're passionate about have to happen in the Murdock Automotive Group, and some of the things that may be a struggle right now in that you found since you've taken a leadership role with Ben and Tyson, your cousin. Tell us about leadership.
Great, thank you. I think the thing I think about the most when it comes to leadership is I think of the example of my dad and my uncle. What I admire so much about both of them is they never asked anybody to do anything that they weren't willing to do themselves. They led by example. And the other thing that I think was the foundation of their leadership was their integrity. And the thing they told us over and over and over again was, if you always do the right thing, the success will take care of itself. You don't have to worry about the dollars and cents if you do all of your business the right way. If you do it with integrity, the rest will happen. And their example of that by far has been more impactful than I think anything else that's happened in our organization. Now, as I think about leadership and how it has evolved, especially in the car business and in our organization, to me, as corny and cliche and cheesy as this may sound, to me, leadership is love. And you can't lead anybody that you don't genuinely care about. And for the leaders in our organization, the most fundamental principle of leading is knowing them, knowing about their family, knowing about their spouses and their kids, what they love to do, what they're passionate about. And by being able to connect with them, it makes it really easy to want to serve them. So the next part of love is service. You serve those you love. And I think the biggest issue in leadership, wherever that may be, is that leadership oftentimes is viewed as a right or a privilege rather than a responsibility. The way we view leadership is it's a responsibility to serve. It's a responsibility to help others get what they want, help others to achieve their goals.
When you talk about that in that context, getting what they want, when they get what they want, whether it's an income, whether it's a number of sales, whether it's riding up and serving people on the service drive, you get what you want.
Yeah.
And we come from an industry, the automotive industry, that oftentimes lead by fear.
Mm-hmm.
And you almost cannot achieve anything but mediocrity in doing so. So I've got an opportunity to view you all for a long period of time, since almost the beginning, and know that you're in sync with the other roles of your life. Whether, work does not have to be out of sync with family, faith, community, and health. You seem to be in sync in all those. How did you achieve that?
I feel like the guiding principles in my life can't function if they're not applicable in every aspect of my life. I can't be a different person at church on Sunday than I am when I walk into the dealership or when I go home at night after work. I have to be able to represent my core beliefs and core values the same in every aspect of my life. And my willingness to do that and the sacrifices that are required and necessary to live that way make it so much easier to be in sync all the way around. I don't know if that answers your question.
Let me ask you that. Well, partially, but I want to get a little deeper.
Sure.
Remember when you started selling cars, and you said the training was pretty much non-existent. We know that it's two things must occur in order for success to happen, and you got to have capital. Those 7 dealerships, the properties, the infrastructure, the facility, and that's not going to happen on its own. It requires money, and that's your responsibility, and you've done that. But the other half is talent. And if you don't have capital and talent, either one of them lacking, you lose.
Yeah.
Both of them together in harmony, you win. So what's the difference when somebody chooses or interviews with you to take that chance? I'm gonna get excited about going to work at the Murdock Automotive Group. Tell me about how they're processed in to their jobs. What is take a client advisor, sales consultant. How are they introduced to serving the guest the first time? And do they serve a guest on their first day?
Yeah, great question. So as we go through the interview process, I don't want to skip that part because I think it's important. We oftentimes interview candidates that have interest in working for us by telling them all of the reasons why they wouldn't want to work for us. One of those reasons just so happens to be we still wear a shirt and tie every day. Mm-hmm. Not everybody loves that. And we have a certain standard of language and professionalism, and we're very upfront about that. We want to make sure that it's a good fit for both of us, that they feel like they can trust us and we can trust them. And as we find that match and people choose to come on board and work with us, we have a very detailed process. So initially, we have them come to the dealership that they have interviewed to work for, and we have them just shadow for a couple of days. We'll have them with another sales consultant, and we'll kind of just have them observe and see, is this something I really want to do? Is this something that I can be excited about? And as they have the opportunity to observe, from there, that gives them the chance to get a little bit of a sense of what a common day would be like, what the expectations are to be successful. And assuming those couple days go well, which they typically do, we introduce them to our corporate sales trainer, Alex. Alex takes them to our corporate office, and they meet with him in a onboarding training class for an entire week. Mm-hmm. It's not a classroom style, like just sit and take notes for an entire week. Very interactive, lot of practice, a lot of role play, and there's many candidates. We do that class 2 times a month, and there's anywhere between 3 candidates, depending on the dealerships that are hiring. I've seen a class as big as 12 candidates, and they have the opportunity to work together and kind of onboard together. So they'll go through that training class, which is detailed by our playbook or our training manual that we've developed over the last 15 years. And it's evolved. I mean, as the business is changing, our processes are changing to make sure that we're ahead of what the guests' expectations and hopes are when they come to a dealership. So as they go through that for a week, they then come back to the dealership where they were hired, and they have a certification process of onboarding when they're actually at the dealership. So with their team leader and manager, they work with them to certify in core competencies at the dealership, how to present a vehicle, how to take an inbound phone call properly, how to handle an internet lead properly, and it's very detailed. Once they've certified in all of those areas, they then go back to shadowing a senior sales consultant, and they'll sell or go through the entire process of selling a vehicle 2 different times with someone else. So they can just observe. Then the roles are reversed, and a senior sales consultant shadows them while they sell 2 different vehicles. So if they get tripped up along the way, or they get nervous, or they can't exactly remember what's next, they have someone there to support them and help them. From there, they pass off their final certifications. Right. They've sold a few cars, and they're off and running. That process typically takes first week of training and then another week to 2, depending on the individual's pace.
So what
before they're on their own.
They end up inviting a coach to help them, mm-hmm. because they see the need for it. So the controlled success, until they get their own rhythm and go into the rhythm of success, and then eventually that habit just becomes part of their DNA, and then they're into the habit of success. But I'd like to end the program by you thinking of the best success story in sales of an individual that came, what they were achieving, what they might have made, and not necessarily using their name unless you want to use their name, and what working at the Murdock Group, how did it change their life? How did it change their income to, and I always look at success at work creates the freedom to be able to look at your other roles in life, family, faith, community, and sound health in a way you can be present. Could you share one of your favorite success stories as we end our program?
Love to. There's many of them. One of the ones I think I'm the most excited about is an individual who came to us while he was in school at BYU and started selling cars, and was on a course to become a CPA accountant. And he wasn't a great salesperson, honestly, but he was incredibly driven. And obviously his focus at the time was, I got to get through school so I can start my career. And he just so happened to be selling cars to help support him through that. But we could see in him that next level that he was capable of had we had all of his attention. So when it came time for him to graduate from BYU, we approached him and said, hey, we'd really like you to stay on the team and give you a promotion into a management role, a leadership role. And there's great opportunity of success. And comparing an introductory salary at a major CPA firm versus what he was already capable of as a salesperson, let alone the opportunity for an advancement, what happened to his income, it made the decision for him at least worth the risk to say, well, maybe I'll give it a try. If it doesn't work out, I can always fall back on accounting, but I'm going to give it a try. So he started out as a used car manager, worked really closely with my dad. My dad was a great mentor and trainer for him, really helped him learn the ins and outs of the business, the details of what went into being a used car manager. As time passed, he had the opportunity to become a new car manager. From there, he had the opportunity to become a general sales manager at another one of our stores, and then eventually became a general manager at one of the dealerships. Over many years of success and leading the dealership to continued growth, he had the opportunity to partner and leave our group to expand his ability to grow and become a car dealer himself. And he is now a car dealer with many brands and many dealerships and doing incredibly well. So the reason I'm excited about that is to see that someone who had a vision for themselves that was potentially working in an office behind a computer for the rest of their lives as an accountant or CPA. And if that was what he was passionate about, great. But we could tell there was something different about him. And for him to find that opportunity through the auto industry and to now have the freedom and flexibility and financial security that the car business has provided him, not to mention the lifestyle, it is pretty phenomenal that that's happened.
And while I shouldn't probably refer to it, and I certainly won't refer to him by name, but now I know who you're talking about, Paul too. But at any rate, from going from an individual that would have had a career, working long hours, particularly during tax time, at least the same hours that somebody that would work in leadership that maybe wasn't as effective as they could be, because that's why they have to work longer, and it's not necessary. You've proved that in your organization, that somebody, if they can get it done, you don't mind them taking time off, right?
Correct.
But somebody that would have made, $150,000, maybe $200,000 as a partner, to becoming a millionaire. Wow, that's a great story.
Amazing. Yeah.
This is a good place for us to end the program. It's been a pleasure talking to you, Blake. And thank you for joining us today.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Perfect.
Thank you.